we're in that mentality from a business perspective, we may feel like we're productive. We may feel like we're hustling and we're doing it all. But if we're being honest with ourselves, we reach a point of diminishing returns very, very quickly. And we are absolutely not at the top of our game. We are absolutely not doing our best work. That is for sure.
And one of the best in hockey that I've seen in recent decades with that in his prime was Peter Forsberg. Before his foot really became a problem, and he could not, whatever the chronic issue was with his foot. If you watched him, when there was a window of opportunity, he was skating as hard as he could be, and he was as focused as he can be. But before that, he was focused on watching the play develop. He would glide with intention. He would move with this intention, but not this frantic, I don't want to overuse the word sprint, but this frantic pace of rushing from one point to another. He'd watch the play develop, wait for that window of opportunity to open, and the minute it did, bam, he was there.
Yeah, no, and that's a great example of it. And again, if I think about it in terms of soccer, it's probably Messi. If I think about it in terms of basketball, maybe Kobe. Just kind of floating and gliding, and then there's this moment of pure explosive energy, unlike ever seen by most other athletes. And then it's back to this floating and gliding, and then there's a moment of explosive energy. And I think if you look at the greats, you'll see that pattern repeated again and again and again.
Because they weren't constantly attacking; they were observing the play. And they were waiting for the perfect opportunity to open up.
That's right. Yeah, and again, I think if we think about it in terms of business, it's such a powerful metaphor to use, whether it's doing really incredibly difficult work, whether it's being kind of floating, observing, and then in a meeting standing up and delivering a really strong message. That's where you're going to have the impact, right? Like the person, the colleague that's always yelling and shouting and wants to be out in front and going, there's no impact. But if in the business world, if I'm floating, if I'm gliding, if I'm observing, if I'm calculating and analyzing, and then I see that moment to explode and strike and I deliver something, that's going to have meaning, right? It's like, if Jim speaks, he doesn't speak a lot, but when he does, there's massive weight there. And I think there's, again, a huge lesson we can learn from that. Just as a side, so Evan asked me to do an evaluation of 2 relationships over the break, and one of them I chose was you. And one of the questions he asked is, what would you guys enjoy doing together? I said, I think Jim and I would enjoy going to a sporting event and drawing parallels to the business world. So it's kind of fun that we're having this conversation today.
Yeah, I think so. Because the other thing I was thinking of in that vein of constantly attacking, the frantic play is sitting at your computer. Because think about it, just about everybody's job these days, they're in front of a computer. Well, in the business world, let's focus there.
Yeah.
Everybody is in front of a computer. So sitting in front of a computer hacking on a keyboard all day is another metaphor to that constantly being on the playing field, moving at a frantic pace and just rushing all over the place. I think some of my best ideas, if I look back at the last 2 years, some of my best ideas have come when I wasn't in front of the computer.
I think for most of us, don't come when we're not in front of the computer. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's something that we've been trying to embody. I think you even have like a walkabout scheduled on your calendar as a reoccurring meeting
to get away from the computer.
And that time. So the time on the computer is putting to work to create the output, but it's everything else that prepares us for that moment. So if we go back to the sports analogy, right? So the thinking, the spending time outdoors, the walkabouts, for me, it's walking over and playing the piano for a few minutes or getting away and picking up a book. All of that is the gliding, the observing, the thinking. And then when we come sit at the computer, we have a burst of creativity, of output, where we combine that all together in one moment, and then it's gone again. We but it's so counterintuitive to what we've been graded by for most of our careers, at least for most of us. I've been very open about sharing stories of working for companies where we would have bosses that would literally go around and take roll. Are you in your seat at this time, between this time and that time? You know, reinforcing the message that when we're at our computer, typing at our computer, that's the expected state for 8 hours a day. But to your point, and if we're being honest with ourselves, most of our breakthroughs, most of our really insightful strategies and things that we've come up with to solve incredibly difficult problems rarely come when we're sitting down and typing at the keyboard. It's when we're in the shower. It's when we're out going for a walk. When it's anywhere else other than. But
Mm-hmm.
we don't allow ourselves that time. And if we do, we say, well, that's not work. And that's nonsense. That is work. That's actually the most important part of work. But
Yeah.
we've been led to believe otherwise. And then we wonder why the companies we work for are so boring and mediocre, and why we're not coming up with any great insights. Well, it's because we've been conditioned to sit at our desk typing all day. Of course it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be boring.